In 1961, Reynolds Wrap ran an ad that promised American housewives something close to a miracle, a hot dinner with not one pan to scrub. A 1960s mom could seal an entire meal inside a silver packet, slide it into the oven or bury it in the coals, and throw the whole mess straight in the trash when it was done. Number 14 on this list was so good that restaurants now charge $16 for it. Number 3 was invented by a mother who was simply too tired to wash another dish. Hit that subscribe button. Let us count down the 25 forgotten aluminum foil dinners. Number 25, the foil baked potato. Before microwaves, before the little bags at the grocery store, there was the foil-wrapped baked potato, the meal that taught every 1960s mom that aluminum foil was more than a leftover wrap. She scrubbed a russet, stabbed it 4 times with a fork, rubbed the skin with a smear of bacon grease, and twisted it up tight in a square of Reynolds Wrap. Into a 400-degree oven for an hour, or straight onto the coals of a backyard cookout, and it came out with a skin that steamed soft instead of turning to leather. A 10-pound bag of potatoes cost about 50 cents in 1963, so a whole family ate for the price of a bus fare. Split it open, drop in a pat of butter and a shake of salt, and a poor man's supper suddenly looked like a steakhouse side. And when it was done, there was no crusted baking sheet in the sink, just a ball of hot foil in the cleanup bin. Number 24, corn on the cob in foil. Come August, when the roadside stands were selling sweet corn, a dozen for a quarter, a 1960s mom did not stand over a boiling pot in a hot kitchen. She peeled back the husk, laid a pat of butter and a pinch of salt right against the kernels, folded the husk back up, and rolled the whole ear in foil. Then it went on the grill grate next to the burgers, turned every few minutes, steaming in its own silver jacket. The foil trapped the moisture so the corn never dried out, and the butter melted down into every row. When you peeled the packet open at the table, a cloud of sweet steam rose up and the whole ear glistened. There was no pot of scalding water to drain, no colander to wash, no starchy film left on the stove. She could make a dozen at once for a church picnic and hand them out already buttered. Nobody ever needed a second trip to the kitchen. Number 23, hobo hamburger packets. This was the meal that fed a family of 6 on 1 pound of ground beef and left absolutely nothing to clean. A 1960s mom tore off a big square of heavy-duty foil, laid down a flattened patty of seasoned ground chuck, then piled on sliced potato, a ring or two of onion, a handful of cut carrots, and a knob of butter. Salt, pepper, maybe a splash of Worcestershire. Then she folded the foil into a tight little pouch, sealing the seams so no juice could escape, and baked it at 375 degrees for 45 minutes. Inside that packet, everything steamed together. The beef juices soaked into the potatoes. The onions went sweet and soft. The whole thing tasted like a pot roast that had cooked all day, except it took 1 pound of the cheapest meat at the counter, about 55 cents in 1962. Every kid got their own packet with their name grease penciled on top. No plates got dirty, no pot got scrubbed. Dinner went from the oven to the trash can. Number 22, foil-wrapped garlic bread. Every spaghetti night in a 1960s kitchen ended the same way, a loaf of bread buttered, wrapped, and warmed. A mom took a loaf of Italian bread, sliced it most of the way through, and worked softened butter into every gap, pressing in a little garlic salt or a shake of Parmesan from the green can. Then she wrapped the whole loaf in foil and set it in the oven for the last 10 minutes while the sauce finished. The foil steamed the inside soft, while the crust stayed warm, and the butter melted straight down into the bread instead of running onto a pan. She unwrapped it right at the table, folding the foil back like the paper on a bakery loaf. There was no greasy baking sheet, No burnt butter to scrape. A loaf cost about 20 cents, and it turned a plate of cheap spaghetti into something that felt like a sundae. Number 21. Ham steak and pineapple. When a 1960s mom wanted the table to feel special without a lick of extra work, she reached for a ham steak and a can of pineapple rings. She laid a slice of ham on foil, set 2 pineapple rings on top, spooned the sweet juice over it, sprinkled on brown sugar, and folded the packet shut. As it baked, the sugar and juice melted into a sticky glaze that basted the ham from every side, and the smell that came out was pure Sunday church supper. A canned ham steak cost about 50 cents, the pineapple maybe a quarter, and together they fed the whole table. It looked like a Hawaiian hotel plate, the kind of thing families were seeing on television and dreaming about. But there was no roasting pan crusted with burnt sugar, no glaze cemented to a dish, just a folded packet and a clean kitchen. Number 20, foil-baked apples. Dessert came out of the same roll of foil as dinner. A 1960s mom cored an apple, dropped brown sugar, a pat of butter, and a shake of cinnamon into the hollow, and twisted it up in a square of Reynolds wrap. It went in the oven alongside the supper packets, or into the dying coals, and 40 minutes later came out soft all the way through. The sugar and butter turned to warm caramel pooling in the center. A bag of orchard apples cost next to nothing in the fall, and this turned it into a dessert that felt like a treat from a diner. No sticky baking dish, no caramel welded to the glass. The apple cooked in its own little bowl of foil, and when the last bite was gone, the whole thing went in the trash. Number 19, green beans and bacon. Here is where things get interesting. Every 1960s vegetable garden gave up more green beans than a family could eat, and a mom was not about to let a single handful rot. She snapped fresh beans into a length of foil, laid a strip of raw bacon across the top, dropped in a slice of onion and a pat of butter, then sealed the packet tight and let it steam in the oven or over the coals. The bone fat rendered down and soaked into the beans while they cooked, and the onion went chopped and sweet. What came out did not taste like a plain vegetable. It tasted like something that had simmered on the back of a stove all afternoon with a ham bone. A pound of green beans from the garden cost nothing, and a single strip of bacon flavored the whole batch. No pot to boil, no colander to drain, no greasy skillet. Just a warm silver packet that turned the most ordinary vegetable on the table into the one the kids actually finished. Let us stop here for a second, because the aluminum foil packet was not really about food. It was about a woman's time. In 1965, the average American housewife spent close to 4 hours a day in the kitchen, much of it at the sink with a wire pad, scrubbing burnt-on grease off pots that never came fully clean. Foil changed that arithmetic overnight. A meal cooked inside foil did not stick to anything because it never touched the pan at all. The mess went in the trash, not the drain board. Reynolds knew exactly what they were selling, and it was not aluminum. It was the 20 minutes at the end of the night a tired mother could finally spend sitting down. That is why these meals spread so fast, and exactly why the food companies that came later worked so hard to sell her a frozen tray instead. Number 18, pork chops and scalloped potatoes. A 1960s mom could build a complete meat and potato supper in a single foil packet, and this was the one that proved it. She laid a bone-in pork chop on the foil, fanned thin-sliced potatoes over it, poured a little milk and a spoonful of canned cream of mushroom soup on top, then scattered onion and salt and sealed it up. Inside the packet, the soup and milk turned into a creamy scalloped potato, while the chop steamed tender right on top of it. Everything cooked in its own juices, so nothing dried out and nothing burned. A pork chop ran about 60 cents a pound in 1964, and the soup was a dime, which made this a full dinner for one person in a single silver pouch. Making 6 of them was no more work than making one. And the thing that always caused the worst scrubbing, scalloped potatoes baked hard onto a glass dish, simply never happened because the potatoes never touched a dish. They cooked in foil and went out in foil. Number 17, whole baked onions. This one sounds too simple to be a meal, and that was exactly the point. A 1960s mom peeled a big sweet onion, cut a well into the top, dropped in a bouillon cube and a pat of butter, and wrapped the whole thing in foil. It baked slow, an hour or more, until the onion collapsed into layers of soft, golden sweetness, swimming in a pool of buttery beef broth. The bouillon dissolved down through the middle and seasoned every layer. What went in as a plain nickel onion came out tasting like the richest part of a pot roast. She served it right in the foil, folded open like a cup, and you ate it with a spoon. It stretched a thin supper into something that filled you up, and it cost almost nothing. No baking dish caramelized with onion sugar, no pan to soak overnight. Just a warm packet and a spoon, and a flavor no modern side dish out of a box has ever matched. Number 16, chicken and stuffing packets. Now here is where the food companies started paying attention. A 1960s mom could take a chicken breast, lay it on foil, spoon a mound of seasoned bread stuffing beside it, add a pat of butter and a splash of broth, and seal it into a packet that came out of the oven like a whole holiday dinner shrunk down to one serving. The steam kept the chicken moist and softened the stuffing into something rich and savory, all in 40 minutes. But here's the part nobody mentions. When stovetop stuffing hit shelves in 1972, its whole advertising campaign was built on convincing busy mothers that a boxed side was easier than what they were already doing. And what they were already doing was this. A homemade stuffing packet cost a few pennies of stale bread and a stalk of celery, and it left nothing to wash. The company spent millions teaching a generation to buy convenience they had been making for free. And the foil packet version tasted better because the chicken cooked right on top of it. Number 15, sausage, peppers, and onions. When a 1960s mom wanted the kitchen to smell like a street fair, she made this. She sliced smoked sausage into thick coins, cut a bell pepper and an onion into strips, tossed it all onto foil with a splash of oil and a shake of Italian seasoning, and sealed it up. On the grill or in the oven, everything steamed and browned together, the sausage giving up its smoky fat into the peppers, while the onions went soft and sweet. What came out was a full meal you piled onto a roll or ate straight from the foil. A ring of sausage cost under $1 and fed the family, and a garden pepper cost nothing. For a mom with arthritis in her hands, there was barely any knife work and no heavy skillet to scour. The peppers never scorched onto a pan because there was no pan. 1 packet or 8, the cleanup was the same, a walk to the trash can. Number 14, foil-baked lakefish. Here is the one that restaurants charge $16 for today. When a 1960s dad came home from the lake with a stringer of trout or a mess of perch, a mom did not dredge them in flour and splatter grease all over the stove. She laid a cleaned fish on foil, tucked a few lemon slices and pats of butter into the cavity, scattered on onion and a pinch of salt and dill, and folded it into a tight packet. Baked or set over the coals, the fish steamed in its own juices, and the lemon butter staying moist and flaking off the bone in perfect pieces. The foil caught every drop of the buttery, lemony liquor, which you spooned right back over the fish. A fish caught that morning cost nothing at all, and the only other ingredients were a lemon and a little butter. Today, this exact preparation shows up on restaurant menus dressed up with a French name and a steep price. Back then it was Friday supper, and the best part was that the whole fishy, greasy mess sealed itself inside the foil and went straight to the trash. Number 13, sweet potato packets. A 1960s mom knew a foil-wrapped sweet potato was one of the cheapest ways to put something rich on the table. She scrubbed them, wrapped each one tight, and baked them slow until the sugars caramelized and the flesh turned soft and almost jammy. When she peeled the foil back, the skin had gone dark, and the inside was practically candy, needing nothing but a pat of butter and maybe a sprinkle of brown sugar or a few marshmallows melted on top. Sweet potatoes were dirt cheap, especially in the fall in the South, and they filled a stomach the way few things could. For a family stretching a paycheck, one was a supper all by itself. And because the caramelizing sugars stayed sealed in the foil, they never scorched onto a pan into that black crust that took a razor blade to remove. The mess cooked itself and threw itself away. Number 12, kielbasa and sauerkraut. In the Polish and German neighborhoods of Chicago, Milwaukee, and Cleveland, this was a weeknight standby that made itself. A 1960s mom laid a length of kielbasa on foil, heaped drained sauerkraut over it, added a sliced onion and sometimes a spoonful of brown sugar to cut the sharpness, and sealed it up. As it baked, the sausage fat ran down into the kraut, mellowing it and turning it savory while the sausage plumped and browned. What came out was tangy, smoky, and hearty enough to anchor a cold weather supper. A ring of kielbasa was cheap, the sauerkraut cheaper, and together they fed a family for next to nothing. The beauty was that sauerkraut normally left a sour, stubborn film welded to any pot it touched, and in foil, it never touched a pot. She folded it open, and the kitchen stayed clean. Number 11, foil-wrapped meatloaf. Here is a trick that saved a whole generation of Sunday suppers. Meatloaf was the ultimate way to stretch a pound of ground beef, but it was also the ultimate pan to scrub. Grease baked into a loaf pan, cooked on crust in every corner. So a 1960s mom stopped using the pan. She mixed her ground beef with soaked bread, an egg and grated onion, shaped it into a loaf right on a double sheet of heavy foil, brushed the top with ketchup, and wrapped it into a sealed packet. It baked in its own juices, staying moist all the way through, and the ketchup caramelized into a sweet glaze on top. A pound of ground beef and a few slices of stale bread fed 6 people, and here is the chemistry her mother taught her. The milk-soaked bread held moisture inside the meat, so every slice stayed tender instead of drying into a brick. Professional chefs call that a panade now and act like they invented it. She just called it Wednesday supper, and the loaf pan that used to soak in the sink for 2 days never got dirty at all. Number 10, ham and cheese pockets. When a 1960s mom needed to feed hungry kids fast, after school or before a ball game, she made hot little foil pockets that were a meal in the hand. She buttered a split hard roll, layered in sliced ham and a slice of American cheese and a smear of mustard, wrapped each one tight, and warmed them for 10 minutes. The foil steamed the bread soft and melted the cheese into the ham until the whole thing pressed together, warm and gooey. A pack of sliced ham and a brick of cheese fed the whole crew for pennies a sandwich. She could wrap a dozen in the morning and warm them whenever the kids came storming through the door. And because they cooked sealed in foil, no cheese ever oozed onto a pan and burned black. The kids ate them right out of the wrapper, and the only thing left behind was a crumpled ball of silver. Number 9, foil-baked stuffed peppers. Stuffed peppers were how a 1960s mom turned 1 pound of ground beef into a supper that looked like real effort and foil made them almost effortless. She hollowed out bell peppers, filled them with a mix of browned ground beef, cooked rice, canned tomatoes, and onion, then stood each one up on its own square of foil and wrapped it snug. The rice doubled the filling for almost no money, and the pepper itself became the bowl. Inside the packet, the pepper steamed tender, while the filling cooked through, and the tomato juices soaked into the rice. Bell peppers were a nickel apiece at a roadside stand, and a single pound of beef stretched to fill 6 of them. They looked like abundance sitting on the plate, but they cost almost nothing. And the casserole dish that stuffed peppers, usually left crusted with baked-on tomato and cheese, that dish stayed clean in the cupboard because every pepper cooked and served in its own foil wrapper. Number 8. The shrimp and sausage boil packet. Down on the Gulf Coast, a 1960s mom did not need a giant pot and a mountain of dishes to put a seafood feast on the table. She loaded a big square of foil with shrimp, coins of smoked sausage, a chunk of corn, and a few small potatoes, then hit it with butter, a squeeze of lemon, and a heavy shake of seasoning before sealing it tight. On the grill or in the oven, everything steamed together, the sausage flavoring the shrimp perfuming the corn, the butter and spice tying it all together. When she cut the packet open, the smell of a Louisiana cookout filled the kitchen. It looked like a spread you would pay good money for at a coast restaurant, but it fed one person off one packet for a fraction of that. No massive boiling pot to wrestle to the sink, no strainer, no counter covered in shells. She dumped it on a plate and threw the foil away. Number 7. Cornish game hen in foil. This was the meal a 1960s mom made when she wanted the table to feel elegant without spending Sunday afternoon over a roast. A Cornish game hen was small enough to give each person their own little bird, and cheap enough that she could afford a table full of them. She rubbed one with butter, tucked a lemon wedge and a sprig of whatever herb she had into the cavity, seasoned the skin with salt and paprika, and sealed it into a foil packet. It roasted in its own juices, staying so moist the meat slid right off the bone, and the foil caught every drop of the buttery pan liquor. Setting a whole little bird in front of each person, still steaming in its silver wrapper, made an ordinary weeknight feel like a special occasion. It looked like something out of a fancy magazine, the kind of dinner suburban families aspired to. But there was no roasting pan glazed with burnt drippings, no rack to scrub. Each hen cooked and arrived in its own foil, and dinner cleaned up in a single trip to the trash. Number 6. Chicken and rice packets. When a 1960s mom wanted a whole dinner in one silver pouch, she reached for chicken and rice. She spooned a bed of raw instant rice onto a sheet of heavy foil, laid a chicken piece on top, poured over a little broth and a spoonful of cream of mushroom or cream of chicken soup, added peas and a shake of seasoning, then sealed the packet tight so no steam could escape. Inside, the rice drank up every drop of the seasoned broth, while the chicken cooked tender right on top of it. What came out was a creamy chicken and rice casserole in a single serving with no dry spots and no burnt edges. A can of soup was a dime, a cup of rice was pennies, and a chicken thigh was cheaper than the breast because everyone thought white meat was better. For a mom, the miracle was that a rice casserole normally cemented itself to the bottom of the dish like glue. In a foil packet, it never touched a dish at all. Dinner cooked, served, and disappeared, all in foil. Number 5. Banana boats. Here is the one every kid remembers. When a 1960s mom wanted to give the children a treat around a backyard fire or at the end of a cookout, she made banana boats, and the whole thing cost the price of a banana. She left the banana in its peel, cut a slit down the length of the inside, and stuffed the opening with miniature marshmallows and chunks of a chocolate bar. Then, she wrapped the whole banana in foil and set it right on the dying coals for a few minutes. When she peeled the foil back, the banana had gone soft and warm, the chocolate had melted into it, and the marshmallows had turned into gooey pockets of sweetness. The kids ate it right out of the peel with a spoon, chocolate on every chin. It was the campfire dessert that made summer nights feel like the whole world was good. And here is the quiet genius of it. The messiest, stickiest dessert imaginable, melted chocolate and marshmallow, cleaned up with nothing but a crumpled ball of foil tossed into the fire. No pan, no plate, no sink. Just a happy kid and a warm night, which is the whole reason a tired mother reached for that roll of foil in the first place. Number 4. Baked beans in foil. A 1960s mom knew a can of pork and beans could taste homemade with almost no effort and no pot to scour. She emptied the beans onto a sheet of foil shaped into a bowl, stirred in brown sugar, a squirt of mustard, a splash of ketchup, and chopped onion and bacon, then loosely sealed the top. Baked slow or set at the edge of the grill, the beans thickened and caramelized, the bacon fat melting through them, the sugar turning them dark and sticky. What started as a plain 20-cent can tasted like beans that had baked in a pot all afternoon. She served them right in the foil, folded down like a dish. Baked beans were the side that welded themselves to any casserole they touched, leaving a burnt sugar crust that took forever to scrub. In foil, that mess simply threw itself away, a cookout side that fed a crowd and cost almost nothing. Number 3. The morning foil packet. This is the one that was invented, as the story goes, by a mother who was simply too tired to wash another dish. Somewhere in a farmhouse kitchen, a 1960s mom, facing a sink already full from supper, figured out that breakfast could cook in foil too. She cracked an egg onto a square of foil, added a handful of diced potato she had left over, a bit of chopped ham or crumbled sausage, a slice of cheese, and a shake of salt and pepper, then folded it into a packet and set it in a low oven or on the back of the grill. Everything steamed together into a complete hot breakfast, eggs set soft, potatoes warm, cheese melted through it all. She could make one for each person and have breakfast for 6 going at once with no skillet, no spatula, no greasy stovetop to wipe down. It cost pennies of leftovers and fed a working family before dawn. There was no frying pan crusted with burnt eggs soaking in the sink. The breakfast that usually made the biggest morning mess made none at all. Number 2. Salmon foil packets. Before salmon became a restaurant luxury, a can or a fresh side of it was an affordable way for a 1960s mom to put fish on the Friday table without stinking up the whole house with grease. She laid a salmon fillet on foil, topped it with a few pats of butter, thin lemon slices, a scatter of onion, and a shake of dill and salt, then sealed it into a packet. As it baked or steamed over the coals, the salmon cooked gently in the lemon butter, staying moist and flaking apart at the touch of a fork, while the foil caught every drop of the buttery juices to spoon back over the top. It looked like something you would order at a nice supper club, but it cost a fraction of that and took 10 minutes to put together. And the reason it mattered most to a busy mother was that fish was the one thing that left a pan smelling for days and greased up the whole stove. Sealed in foil, the fish never touched a pan, and the smell and the mess went out with the trash. Number 1. The silver turtle. At the top of this list is the meal that defined the whole idea, the one that every 1960s mom, camp counselor, and Boy Scout leader knew by heart. The silver turtle, the original hobo dinner. A double square of heavy-duty foil. A patty of seasoned ground beef pressed into the center. Sliced potatoes, carrots, and onion piled on top. A pat of butter, a shake of salt and pepper, maybe a splash of Worcestershire. Then the foil was folded up and over, crimped along every seam into a sealed silver pouch shaped like a little turtle shell, and set right into the coals of a campfire or the oven at home. Inside that packet, over the next 45 minutes, something close to magic happened. The beef juices ran down into the potatoes. The carrots and onions steamed, soft and sweet. Everything braised together in its own liquid until it tasted like a pot roast that had cooked all afternoon, from ingredients that cost less than $1 for the whole family. It was the meal that stretched the cheapest pound of ground beef at the counter into a full, hot, complete dinner, one packet per person, each one cooking itself with no attention at all. A mother could hand every kid their own turtle with their name scratched on top and let them cook their own supper in the coals. And when it was done, there was nothing. No pot, no pan, no plate, even if you ate it straight from the foil. No sink full of grease waiting at the end of a long day. Just a warm packet, a full stomach, and a ball of silver tossed into the fire. That was the whole promise of aluminum foil in one meal, a real dinner made from almost nothing that cleaned up by simply throwing itself away. Every family that ever camped, every mother who was ever too tired to face the sink, every kid who ever grease-penciled his name on a foil pouch and pulled it steaming from the coals, they all knew the silver turtle. And somewhere along the way, we traded it for a frozen tray and forgot it existed. Here is my challenge. Make one of these this week. Just one. The silver turtle, the hobo hamburger packet, the foil-baked apple, the banana boats with the kids. Then come back and tell me if I am wrong, because these were never just shortcuts. They were how a tired mother put a real dinner on the table and still had the energy to sit down with her family. Drop the one you are going to try in the comments. I want to know if the silver turtle gets more love than the banana boats, because these were not just dinners. They were a little bit of freedom wrapped in foil.